faith. This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Start recording. Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm accompanied by my partner in film, Devin, and we're here to present our review of Godzilla -1. And before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. So Devin, happy Monday, the first December Monday of 2023. What's going on? How you been? And what did you do this weekend? I'm curious.
I can't believe it's already December. Like, what happened?
I don't know.
That's all you can really say to that. It's only a real answer.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's like, again, we always go back to it, but it's like as soon as, 2020 happened, it's like everything's just a blur. But did you do anything fun this weekend? Or I don't know. I can't remember if I talked to you this weekend or not. I don't think so.
Well, Saturday was a pretty good time. We ended up seeing Godzilla -1, this movie we're covering with Matt. It was a good time, Matt and Marley. And then after that, we had a nice game night at their place.
Nice. That's awesome. Man, mine was, I don't know. The weekends are just, they're never long enough. Friday, I didn't do too much. Saturday night, I went to a friend's show. And then Sunday is when I saw Godzilla -1 with a buddy of mine in 4DX. That was an experience.
That's a lot of D's.
Yes. It was, man, wild. I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but I'm glad that you had a good weekend. Did you see Godzilla in IMAX or no?
No, it was just regular.
Gotcha. Oh, that's right. Because I think the closest IMAX is in Avon. I believe so. Because that's where I went to go see The Hunger Games for the second time, the prequel with my sister and my mom.
Yeah, there's like the Cinemark XD, but it wasn't showing that for some reason.
Yeah, I noticed for us, like they had IMAX showings for Godzilla -1.
I feel like theaters weren't expecting this to be a hit, and then it was.
Yeah, I think they, I don't know if this was filmed for IMAX or not, but I know we had IMAX showings yesterday, but they didn't start until like 6, 7 o'clock. I think it's because of the Beyonce concert that's out, because I know that's also an IMAX, much like when Taylor Swift had her concert, she took up a lot of IMAX screens as well. But yeah, I'm glad you had a great weekend altogether. But for those listening for the first time, welcome. And for returning listeners, again, welcome. Today, we are going to be giving a spoiler-free review of Godzilla -1. This kind of just came at a surprise. I knew it was coming out. I knew a Godzilla movie was coming out this year, but I didn't do a lot of research on it. And I didn't know too much about it altogether. But I'm glad that we were able to see this, and I implore everyone else to watch this movie. It is fantastic. This is literally one of the best movies of the year. Like, it is in my top 5, like right now. I think it's either number 3 or 4 right now, after giving it some thought, but it is a wild ride. So without further delay, to build up the anticipation, we'll be right back after this introduction to Godzilla -1.
どんなことがあっても死んではいけない。銀座を襲ったあいつ、
オード島だ。ゴジラですよね。
あんなもん倒せっかありません。
東京がまた火の海になるのは見たくない。
戦争が終わってないんです。今度の戦いは未来を生きるための戦いなんです。ゴジラ-1
And we are back with our Godzilla -1 review. The director and writer of this film is the one, the only Takashi Yamazaki.
He's also the main VFX coordinator with the movie as well.
He is, yeah.
It's rare. It feels like that's rare to direct, write, and do VFX. Like, he did it all.
Hey, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. You know, he had his team, but, you know, he's like, it needs to look, you know, he wants his version of Godzilla to look a certain way. And by gum, they got it done on a $15 million budget, I believe, which is insane to think about. But the stars of this film, we have Sakura Ando, Ryunosuke Kamiki, and Minami Hanabe. The synopsis of this film is as follows. Post-war Japan at its lowest points when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb. So just a little backstory on Godzilla. He is a literal allegory for the atomic bomb, or like nuclear destruction, of course, of everything that happened during World War II, which is where this film takes place. It kind of takes place on the tail end of World War II in Japan. And for those also wondering what Godzilla -1 actually means, the concept of the -1 in this film is that Japan, which had already been in a devastating war, World War II, was facing a new threat of Godzilla, bringing the country into the minus. So the idea is that Godzilla is attacking at a time when the country is very much on its heels.
They're already at ground zero, and then this brought them just even further down.
Yeah, it brought them to sub-zero, honestly.
I did think initially that it was something to do with temperature, because there's a portion of the movie where Godzilla's got some iciness. So I thought it was like -1 degrees, but it ended up being that instead.
Could you imagine Godzilla -1? But then again, some of the posters, like it's -1, but it literally just reads, you know, for, I guess, American mathematics, -1. But yeah, we're just going to dive straight on into this because, man, this was a big surprise. For those also who don't know, before we get into our spoiler-free review, this is a Japanese film, so there are subtitles, and I kind of found that out like last minute, but then when I looked more into the movie, I kind of assumed that was happening, but I was like, maybe they'll have a dub. But usually with live action foreign films, when they dub over, it's never good. I watched Squid Game that way, the Korean series, but this is definitely better in Japanese. It's very easy to follow along. And it's technically a foreign film. So I'm going to pass it over to Devin so he can give his initial reactions to Godzilla -1.
Yeah, going into this one, this is a movie that was really not on my radar at all. Going into this, I knew of it, but I didn't know anything about it, any of the background, didn't know it was Japanese made. I just kept seeing over the past few weeks, there's just been hype building and building. Like different reviews have been dropping. People have been saying how amazing this movie is. And then at one point you said you wanted to cover it. So I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's see what the hype is about. And oh boy, the hype is real on this one. Like, I didn't know what to expect going in, and it kind of just blew away every expectation. I know on our Holdovers review that we said that was the surprise hit of the year, but I think Godzilla might have stomped out Paul Giamatti on this one here, out of nowhere for me at least. Where the biggest compliment to this movie is that we actually care about these human characters, and that is something that really, in my experience, has never been done in a Godzilla movie before. Where even when Godzilla is not on the screen, we are very much so entertained and intertwined in this story and in these characters. And that's something that I know the director and writer, Sid, was definitely a big part of what he wanted to accomplish, and he definitely did that. And I was very impressed by that, because these characters, at the end of the day, we if they die, we care about that. It's usually the other way around, where you're watching the movie and you're rooting for Godzilla the whole time. He's like the big bad guy that you just kind of root for carnage and terror. But on this one, he is the bad guy. Like, you do not want him to win, and you want him to be taken down. And this movie does such a good job of portraying that. Like, he just looks so badass and legitimately scary at times. Like, that's never been done before, where he just looks like an actual monster. And it, like, just the looks in his eyes and the way he's like hunting down people, and there's just reckless abandon. He doesn't care. He's just a killing machine in this one. The fact that you said the budget is $15 million, that is incomprehensible. Like, I don't understand how they did that. $15 million budget, and it looks this good. Like, pretty much flawless. Like, I can't really think of any moments where it's like, oh, that looks a bit off. Like, oh, maybe they could have done better there. Like, nope, it just looks amazing throughout the entire movie. And to do that on like a tenth of the budget of the usual Hollywood movie, like, for example, Godzilla versus Kong's like $150 million. This blows that out of the water for like the effects and everything. And it's just, the more I learn about this movie, the more I'm impressed by it. And I just can't get enough of kind of that post-movie research that a lot of people do, where you're just kind of invested in a movie and you want to learn more about it. I'm deep in that. That's why I sent you that Corridor. Corridor Crew. That was the name.
Corridor Crew. Yeah. They're able to kind of give us those, how VFX are done, from the early days, because Godzilla's been around since like the 1940s. But sorry, go ahead.
I definitely recommend that video. They have an interview with the director, and it's very charming and just kind of shows his mindset and what he wanted to accomplish with this movie. But I think that's kind of always a sign of when a film really has an effect on you, when you just kind of keep looking stuff up after the movie because you just want to learn more about it and how it was made. That's kind of the movie magic behind it.
Oh, absolutely. And, I as always, I always take to the streets of Letterboxd, me being a new patron of Letterboxd for a year, trying it out. It's been pretty cool so far. But I kind of just, these are just like my super quick thoughts after I saw the movie, saying that, this Godzilla movie reigns supreme as like the best in years. Ever since like 2014, there's been a resurgence in Godzilla, because there was the 2014 Godzilla, which led to Kong Skull Island, which then led to Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that led over all the way to Godzilla versus Kong. And we're getting another Godzilla movie outside of -1, which is a part of that Monsterverse, essentially the American.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're calling it. It's like Godzilla X
Kong. Yeah,
I don't even know. It's like, I think I saw someone call it Godzilla Kong, but it's like, what is the actual title? That trailer, I don't know if you watched the trailer yet, but it's so hard to watch that trailer after seeing this movie.
No, seriously.
It is it's definitely a downgrade. Like, that last moment in the trailer where it's Kong and Godzilla running together, it just looked goofy. I couldn't get past it.
See, I didn't mind that of the trailer too much, but there's a big difference when it comes to like the Americanized version of Godzilla and the Japanese version of Godzilla. And for -1, like you had mentioned, we've seen so mmany Godzilla movies, and usually 9 times out of 10, the story of the humans, because that's really what it should drive these movies forward. Usually the human connections, it's just usually you just kind of follow a group of humans trying to quote unquote help Godzilla, because usually within the other movies, at least since 2014, since like the resurgence, I haven't watched the Monarch series just yet, but I do want to watch that. But since 2014, it's usually these characters are kind of just like thrown to the wayside. Like, oh yeah, they're here. But I would say this movie, I mean, it definitely surpasses like all the other Godzilla movies we've had within recent years.
I was going to ask, have you seen like any of the older ones? 'Cause I haven't seen anything like pre-2000, like any of those ones, because there's been a lot. I mean, obviously, I've seen all the recent ones from America, but...
Right. I haven't seen anything pre-2000. I think there was one in the 90s that Americanized Godzilla. I did watch that once at a friend's house, but I haven't revisited it since.
I've been hearing everyone say this is like the best Godzilla movie ever, and
I would actually kind of have to agree.
Yeah, you have to agree, because I haven't seen the other ones, but just based on these past 20 years, it definitely is.
Oh yeah. Within the past 20 years, for sure. Like, yeah, we can't really speak to like the old school Godzilla movies. I'm sure that there's a lot of Godzilla fanatics out there. There's like Shin Godzilla as well, but from what we've experienced with Godzilla, the movies that we've seen, this is definitely the best Godzilla movie to date, at least for us. But this movie was just, I'm kind of at a loss for words, because I loved the human characters. You have this kamikaze pilot who, it's towards the end of the war, and he kind of gets pardoned from his kamikaze duties after a few instances. And then it just rolls from there, like him coming home. And like I said, this is towards the end of World War II. So Japan is already in a state of peril and a state of recovery, like barely even recovering. For this main character to come home and to find like pretty much everything that he knew just gone. Everything's just destroyed. But the movie goes from there, and I know we keep going back to the characters, but the characters in this movie were just so gosh darn good, and it really made those scenes with Godzilla more impactful, because this is a humans versus Godzilla story. This isn't the humans, we found this monster and they seem to be finding another monster. No, Godzilla is on a freaking rampage through Ginza and Tokyo. And the way that they're able to combat against Godzilla is fan-freaking-tastic. You see Godzilla wrecking cities left and right, and you really get to feel the power of this being. We've seen it in other movies, but this is the first movie where, you feel as if the human characters are just completely defenseless. And it's like, they're like, hey, we have to stop this thing. We're coming off of a war. This is putting the country in an even worse state than the war. For World War II. And it's when I saw it, it was in 4DX, like I mentioned earlier. I can't not recommend to see this in 4DX because it was a fun time. Literally anytime there's you're on a boat or you're in the air, flying in the plane, it really did put you in the shoes of these people. And anytime, Godzilla's coming through wrecking just buildings or, small villages or attacking beaches, you felt it, man. I felt like I was on a Disney wild roller coaster, a jungle adventure. It was insane, Devin. It was.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
It was a little bit jarring, but because I think there were some scenes in the film where the 4DX worked very well, but others they probably could have done without. But I want to go see this again in IMAX because I want to see the full scale of Godzilla. And there's within these characters, the main character more specifically, man, the speech is. I'm sorry, I'm gone all over the place. I know I'm kind of just aimlessly talking about.
That's just the sign of a good movie. Once again, sign of a great movie, even.
And it being in Japanese, like I can't really say I've experienced like a Japanese Godzilla film in its entirety. And I'm glad that we were able to watch this because it felt so freaking authentic.
Yeah, it was very easy to follow too. Like obviously there's subtitles, but it's just like the story in general. It's very simple, but it's very effective. Like in its simplicity is part of why it's so good.
Yeah. And my friend actually came with me. He had to use the bathroom. It was kind of funny. He left during one of the best scenes. He didn't know it though. He left during one of the best scenes of the movie, Devin. And he came back. He's like, what did I miss? I'm like, dude, we'll just have to talk after because, we of course we could see Godzilla's atomic breath as well. But I love how we were actually able to see the damage of what Godzilla does to these people and how it affects their lives.
On sea, on land, anywhere.
Air, kind of, sort of. Unless, Godzilla can't sprout wings, but there's always that. Man, oh man, that would have been freaking insane. But I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much airtime. Devin, is there anything else or anything you wanted to mention that we haven't been able to talk about yet?
I love the ragtag crew we get here with this group of characters that we have at the core of the core team that has to kind of band together and come up with a plan to defeat Godzilla, which is just something you can't even like fathom. And I really like the plan they ended up coming up with because obviously I'm no scientist, but it all made sense. Like when I was hearing it, like, yeah, let's sink them to the depths of the ocean and then let's raise them back up quickly and rapidly, and all that air pressure will just kind of doom him. And then, of course, it didn't end up working because he's Godzilla. Didn't end up working as exactly planned, but they got the job done at the end of the day. And just, I love the scientist. I think his name was Kenji Noda. He kind of gave me Kei Kwan vibes, just kind of off of appearance. And it's just, once again, these characters that you care about them. And Godzilla, he just looks so cool. And the battle that they have, it's all really well done.
Yeah. And, just speaking on like the main character, Shikishima, he was fantastic. Him being the Kamikaze flight pilot and him effectively finding a new life after the war. And, him kind of dealing with the shame that came with his decisions that we're not really going to disclose. But the fact that he was able to build a life with Oishi Noriko, excuse me.
Kiko was the little girl's name. She was so cute.
Yeah, she was great too. And Shikishima's it really, obviously he's the main character, but he goes through his own stages of grief and wondering if he should be alive or not. And you think it's going to go one way and then it doesn't. But then the very end of the movie, Devin, I'm not sure if you caught this, but there's some things creeping around. Do you know what I'm trying to talk about it without talking actually about it, but
yeah, there's also like a little audio Easter egg after the credits too.
Is there really? I didn't know.
Yeah, just like a little audio clip.
Ooh, that's
more like a noise than anything, but
gotcha. So do you think we'll get a sequel to this? Because I would love a sequel to this.
Yeah, I had to imagine, because just based on the success this movie's having and the critical fame it's reaching, where this is all, like, at least here in America, it's all word of mouth. Like, I don't think anyone expected this movie to do well, and over this past weekend, more and more people have been going to see it because everyone's been saying how good it is, and it's just kind of spreading like that, and it's kind of that natural word of mouth growth. It's also just the perfect time where, like you said, kaijus and Godzilla in general are just booming right now, and we're getting more movies in the future. We have this Monarch show, which I did watch the first episode of last night because obviously I was in the Godzilla mood, and it's a pretty good start.
Okay.
It's not focused on Godzilla specifically, just monsters in general. at least the first episode. But yeah, it's definitely entertaining. But yeah, it's a perfect time because there's just going to be so much kaiju in the next few years.
Yeah, and you know, I've been reading through like a lot of Rotten Tomatoes, like just a few people's comments and stuff. People saying that, you know, like this movie shows that like kaiju movies aren't like retiring anytime soon. That came from Katie Smith Wong from Flick Feast, Keith Garlington from Keith and the Movies. He was saying Godzilla -1 offers a crash course on how to make a blockbuster. It has a signature thrills and big screen spectacle, and you know, but it's deeply ingrained in the human element that makes it a standout. And I hope we do get a sequel for this. You know, obviously this is just based on an existing property, but
I mean, especially with a budget like that, like 15 million, like it just feels like you can do so many movies.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're a director is also the VFX, you know, supervisor. So he's making sure that.
I wonder how long it took.
Man, oh man. I don't know. It's like, and you know, obviously a lot of work was put into this film. So it's not like it was done effortlessly. But I think that Hollywood can kind of look at this and say, hey, you know, with the right amount of people, instead of like 10 teams making one movie.
Right amount of people and time.
Yeah, time is a big one as well. And you know, the runtime for this runs in at like 2 hours and 5 minutes. And you know, it's audience scores at a 98 and tomato meters at a 96. And you know, I definitely agree with those scores because it is just wild. If you are a fan of Godzilla or just looking for a new take on Godzilla, it's, you know, this movie does get me excited for Godzilla X Kong, but this is obviously a different Godzilla, so it doesn't follow that storyline. But yeah, like Godzilla himself, he was in the film a good amount, unlike in 2014 where like you see, you know, he's kind of like the shadows on the wall type situation. But here I feel like he was, you know, well, like when he came on screen, they made sure that you knew.
Yeah, speaking of that 2014 one, I saw in the trivia on IMDb that Gareth Edwards, who directed that one, attended a screening of this one, and he said that he was jealous because this is what a Godzilla movie should be like. And that's some high praise there.
Yeah, well, I mean, he also killed off one of his best characters in his own movie, so it's like the writers, you know, it was Bryan Cranston, and I think Bryan Cranston even agrees that like his character should not have been killed off.
Yeah, when you have Bryan Cranston in a movie and we still don't care about any of the human characters, there's an issue there.
Yeah, like I mean, but he was the most interesting like human character. Like his storyline was so interesting and just so compelling, and they kind of just like, okay, well, you know, he's gonna die. Then I was like, well, then I just stopped caring about the movie altogether. But yeah, like Gareth Edwards, it's like, I mean, I get being like a little jealous, but like, I mean, this is Godzilla. Like this is the OG. Like this is cultural for sure. Like this, like I want to see more of these kind of movies. Like I said, I'm excited for Godzilla X Kong, but after seeing this, it's going to be like, not saying the comparing because obviously Kong isn't in this film, but just from the Godzilla aspects, I feel like in those movies, they keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the way, Kong should have won in Godzilla versus Kong, but it's totally fine. But yeah, like I definitely want to rewatch those other movies, but like, man, this is at the top of the list for me this year. Let's get into our final thoughts and our ratings here. Devin, I'll pass it back over to you so you can give your final thoughts and ratings for this film.
Yeah, final thoughts. Biggest surprise hit of the year by far. Was not expecting it. The hype is real. So if you have not seen it and you have any interest, you need to go see it while it's in theaters. Don't know how long that'll be, but hopefully it would get a nice long run here in America. Because I think based on the poster, it looks like it came out about a month ago in Japan. So yeah, no, definitely go see it. Definitely one of the best movies of the year for me as well. As far as the score goes, I'll probably give it like a 96 overall. Like there really aren't many issues at all. It just, I mean, there's some story beats where it feels a little convenient, like especially the ending. It just feels like, that's a bit convenient, but the movie is so good, I just kind of forget about it because I enjoy the movie so much.
And that's like, and when we were talking about the other day about like, you know, the 5-star rating, like for films like this, like, you know, we can have small little tidbits here and there, but like if the film works just like overall, because obviously, like people say like no film is perfect. But yeah, this movie was, I'm glad that we were able to cover it. I'm glad that, taking a chance on films like this, where it's like, people could have easily just like disregarded this and like said, oh, well, this movie doesn't have Kong in it, so I'm not going to watch it. But like the score itself.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the score. The score was so good. It was like, I told Matt it was like running through a brick wall music the entire time. It just kept building up.
But it was like old school Godzilla, like monster.
Yeah, they mixed in the old music and the original Godzilla roar perfectly. And
you felt it. And Godzilla himself, like it's kind of a mixture between the modern Godzilla with Godzilla versus Kong and like Shin Godzilla almost, because it has that vintage look, that vintage feel, that vintage atmosphere to it, while, still being made in 2023. And I commend everyone who's worked on this movie, because it was definitely not easy. What did they say? It was over like 500 terabytes for the VFX for water or something of that nature.
Just the water in the ocean alone.
Right. And that is wild. But yeah, Godzilla himself, like, he looked cool, but like he was a threat in this movie. And that is something that I think they were able to do, like, well done. And it's like, hey, it's just humans versus Godzilla. Who's going to come out on top? We don't know. But Godzilla definitely surprises us a few times in this movie, as well as the human characters. But yeah, with all that said, so you're giving this a 96 out of 100. I'm really teetering on just giving this like a solid 100. And I don't think I've given a movie this since Spider-Verse, because like everything about it, at least to me, and me speaking subjectively, because that's how you're supposed to view film, not on an objective basis, but subjectively, everything here worked for me. Towards the end, there was one thing where something, a person gets a telegram, and I kind of assumed what was going on, but then there's another little twist towards the end of that, or like I was right, but it was still impactful altogether. And yeah, I'm ready to give this 100 out of 100. Like,
so we got a 98 overall.
Yeah. So that'll be our median score between Devin and I's score for Godzilla -1, because man, this was just wild. And I want to see it again. I want to own it on Blu-ray. I don't even want a English dub of this movie. This movie needs to remain untouched. Just give me a 4K Blu-ray copy and I'm good to go. But yeah, still excited for Godzilla X Kong. But I mean, after seeing this, it's going to be hard to top, and I'm sure it's going to be a good time altogether. But that does conclude today's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard on today's show, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a fellow movie lover, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love for the Film Optix podcast. Now, let's take a sneak peek at what you can listen to now on the show and what is upcoming. So as of this recording, you can listen to our Saltburn review, spoiler-free, and our spoiler-free review of Wish, as well as our The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes review. We've been covering a lot of crazy stuff here. So yeah, those are just a few things you can listen to as of right now, and upcoming releases you can look forward to. We have our The Holdovers review, our Poor Things review, and The Boy and the Heron, which I'm very excited about. I think this is Devin's first Studio Ghibli film ever, so very, very excited for him to kind of dig in there. And I'm Hayao Miyazaki, man. I'm telling you, I love my Japanese filmmakers. And again, go see Godzilla.
It's a Japanese month.
Yeah, it really is. Go see Godzilla -1 in theaters, everyone. You will not regret it. It is a great time. And what did Bong Joon-ho say? You know, if you can look past like those 2 inches of subtitles, you'll be open up to another whole new world of film. Like, even though this is Godzilla, this is a great freaking movie. So thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And stay connected with us by following us on Twitter and Instagram and Threads for the latest updates on all that social media garbage. That was Devin, and I'm Christian, signing off. And remember, life is like a movie, so go out there and make it a blockbuster.
Peace.